Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. Today I have another book review for you. I am so sorry, by the way, that it took me over a week to get around to doing this review. This wedding stuff, it's for the birds, man. And it's at the last second. So much stuff is happening, constantly changing the seating plans and stuff, just non-stop, thing after thing after thing. For those who don't know, I'm getting married this weekend. I'm really excited about it. I'm marrying the best woman in the whole world. And today, I have a review for a book that I meant to review last week, and I have just completely had the time kicked out from under me. I will be reviewing the other book in the next couple of days before I leave on Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night is when I'm leaving for my honeymoon. I need a vacation. Anyway, this is Goosebumps number 44, Say Cheese and Die Again. Of course, I just read and watched and reviewed the book and episodes for the original Say Cheese and Die, which I really loved. It was so good. Both the TV episode, which is an adaptation, of course, of the book, with Ryan Gosling in it. And it was good, but the book was fantastic. The book is one of the darkest Goosebumps books I've ever read. It's horrifyingly creepy and weird. It just has such a dark atmosphere to it of this kid named Greg finding a camera. Now, of course, this is Say Cheese and Die Again. Is it a direct sequel to the first book? Sorta, kinda. Greg is our main character here again. Sherry is here, Michael, Bird, all those characters that you enjoyed from the first book if you've read it, they're all here. Greg is your main character again, even though at the end of the last book, there were people who found the camera that Greg had to get rid of. And this book should have picked up with that, kind of like how Haunted Mask 2 is pretty much a direct sequel to the first Haunted Mask, for the most part, involving a character from that book. That's not the case with this. This is more like the Monster Blood situation, where they kind of reference what happened before, but the endings don't entirely work together, pretty much. Anyway, Say Cheese and Die Again. I don't hate this book, but I agree with many people. This is a weak sequel. If you know my channel, if you know my reviews, you know how I'm a huge fan of Ghost Camp. I love Ghost Camp. It's such a really scary, creepy Goosebumps book. If you like urban legend stuff, it's kind of like that. Recommend it highly, really. There's a sequel from the Series 2000 line of books, from the early 2000 books, late 90s, whatever, called, I think, Return to Ghost Camp, I believe was the title of that book. And it's not a bad book, per se. It's kind of interesting, as a matter of fact. Not super engaging, but kind of interesting. And as a direct sequel to Ghost Camp, it's awful. It's not a sequel to Ghost Camp, really. It's got almost the most insulting thing to call it that, because it's not. And the kind of story that you get with that is not the same kind of story you got with Ghost Camp. Ghost Camp was a straight up, just to-the-bone scary book. This book is not like the first Say Cheese and Die. It is not as scary, it's not as tense and creepy about this camera that can possibly predict the future. When you take a picture of somebody, they might not even be in the same area that you took a picture of them in. They might be injured in the photo. Mostly, they usually are. Very interesting concept. I love the book. I think Say Cheese and Die is probably one of the best R.L. Stine or Goosebumps books ever written. It's really high up there in my rankings, I would say. Say Cheese and Die Again is a goofy, silly sequel. And it's not awful. It's like how I feel like with the Monster Blood sequels. A lot of people hate the Monster Blood sequels. Pretty much like, I think it's 3 and 4, and definitely 5, which I did not like that much either, called Monster Blood for breakfast. A lot of people kind of seem to not like the sequels to Monster Blood as much as they love the original book in Monster Blood 2. And I get it, it's not for everybody. But for me, I enjoy those sequels to Monster Blood. I enjoy this sequel to Say Cheese and Die, but the tonal shift over to the more comedic side and the serial, or the sillier type of side, it doesn't work as well as the first book being a straight-up thrill ride of scares and potential future predictions and just the worry about characters being in trouble. It doesn't have all that. It's mostly just weird stuff, mainly with Greg and Sherry. For anybody who doesn't know the story of Say Cheese and Die Again, the basic summary of this is that Greg is trying to go to, I believe it's his cousin's house for the summertime coming up, and he really wants to go there, but apparently he has to have really good grades this semester, or this year, whatever, on his report card. If he doesn't have a good grade, if he fails at all, has any Fs, I assume any Ds, anything like that, if he's not passing, he will not be allowed to go to his cousin's house. His parents will make him stay. And to prove his report in class, which I don't know what made Greg think this was a good idea, but his report for a story that happened to them, that was like a bizarre story that happened to you, his story was to tell him about the camera. Tell his whole class and his teacher, I assume his name is Mr. Sauer? I thought it was Sayer, because it's spelled S-A-U-R, but they keep calling him Sourball. So I assume it's sour, just a weird way of spelling it. Kind of like sauerkraut, I think is how sauerkraut's spelled. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, Greg, to tell his story to the class about the camera, he decides to tell them about the camera, which was a bad idea, Greg. What were you thinking? You could have just told him about the time you visited Grandma in Kansas, and you probably would have been okay. You probably would have passed, more than likely. Why did you tell him about the camera that nobody's going to believe? It's a Goosebumps book, though, so people make bad decisions, and it's a horror book, so naturally people will make bad decisions, and he does that. So, Greg himself, he fails after telling him about the camera. And the teacher, Mr. Sayer, whatever, tells him, hey, if you bring in the camera that you claim exists, which reminds yourself, he doesn't have the camera anymore. He took it to the old abandoned house and left it there that they found it in originally, back in Spidey's old homeless, scary Kaufman house places where it was actually at. It's still in there now at the beginning of this book. Greg has to go get the camera with Sherry and bring it back to class and show it to the teacher and prove that it actually predicts the future or predicts a future that it creates for itself. Something like that. That's the general premise here. It's kind of Greg trying to impress his teacher. Now, at one point, Sherry and Greg have pictures taken of them. And this is not a big spoiler. I won't delve into it too much. But again, in the first book, if people had a picture taken of them, they would probably be horribly injured or possibly almost killed or maimed. It almost happened a lot of times. And it was very creepy, very bizarre and weird. Kind of spooky. In this book, what the camera does to Greg and Sherry is just stupid. It's just really stupid, you know? But at the same time, you remember how I talked about in the past, if you're familiar with my channel, familiar with my reviews, or you're familiar with Goosebumps in general, you probably know how there's a lot of comedy books and silly books out there. Like there's one called Chicken, for God's sake. There's books out there that are just more of a silly concept, and I'm okay with that. This book, I would say, is one of those sillier concept types of books from the Goosebumps era, or series, collection, whatever. And it's fun. I have to tell you, it can be fun at times. It's a little bad. It's a little bad, I'll be honest with you. It's mostly insulting for people like myself who love the Say Cheese and Die book and the episode, because if you've seen the episode adaptation of this, which I saw at one time, and I could not believe how awful that episode was. It's not the worst, in my opinion, for what I remember, but it is pretty bad. This episode adaptation can be pretty bad. This book is relatively bad, I would say. It's not horrible, but it's not a good Say Cheese and Die sequel. I actually started recently reading, today as a matter of fact, the third book in the Say Cheese and Die series called Goosebumps Horrorland number 8, Say Cheese and Die Screaming. I'm currently about halfway through this, pretty decent so far. This is a better sequel than Say Cheese and Die Screaming, or Die Again, excuse me. That's my opinion, personally, at the current moment. I could be wrong, and I might change my review, of this, my little thoughts on, by the time the end of the week gets here, and I try to review this before I go on my honeymoon and get married and all that. But, I will say, Say Cheese and Die Again, I don't hate it. It's not a terrible, terrible book. It's not a good book, though. It's just kind of silly and jokey, and that's really, if you expect it to be that, when you go into this book and not expect it to be the first Say Cheese and Die, which is creepy and thrilling and crazy and wild, you might be able to accept this a little bit better. I'm one of these horror fans and movie fans in general that I can watch almost anything. I don't really find anything unwatchable most of the time, but I typically have lower standards for like horror movies and stuff. Like I love found footage. I know a lot of people in the horror genre and horror community don't like found footage because it seems more low budget, seems too easy to make, to just have jump scares and stuff like that. I think there's a little bit of an art to it when it's done well. Anyway, that's a debate for another day. My whole point is, I have lower standards than most people when it comes to movies and books and stuff. So where I enjoy this, I can see a lot of people hating this. Again, as a direct sequel to the first book, it ain't good. But as a standalone book, if you just wanted to read this as your first ever Say Cheese and Die book, which I don't recommend doing that, it might put a bad taste in your mouth if you do hate the book. I don't know if you want to start with this one as your first ever Goosebumps book, but once you've gotten into the natural feel of how a lot of Goosebumps books, can be more silly and goofy and over the top and weird, this might not be horrible. If you like the more silly and comedy focused books, this might be more for you. There's one reason I will say, for sure, why this book is not in a new reprint. I kind of wondered why this book was not in reprint or reissue status, but the original book is, and the third book, the Horrorland book is. And I think I know why. I think if you've read the book and you know today's crazy culture about, like, fat culture and stuff, I think you'll know why. Why this book is probably not in reproduction or reissue or anything. There's a lot of people who are probably really butthurt that this book exists to begin with. It's kind of mean-spirited a little bit, but it's still kind of funny at times. Anyway, Say Cheese and Die Again. What did you guys think about it? Did you love this book? Did you hate it? What did you think about it? I've heard a lot of people in my comment my comment section for the review of the first book and the TV episode of that book tell me that this is a pretty horrible book. I don't entirely agree, but I get why they feel that way. I really do. But again, I have low standards, so if you have low standards too, maybe you'll like it as well. Anyway, if I had to rate Say Cheese and Die Again on a 5-star basis, I would probably give this book about, it's kind of a very average rating. I'd say about a 3 out of 5. I don't hate it like most people. I don't love it. I certainly don't love it. Anyway, I will get around at some point to reviewing the episode. It might be tonight, it might be tomorrow. I don't know when I'll have a review for. Of course, I'm recording this during the daytime. I might review the episode tonight, at nighttime when I get home from work at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But at the current point, I'm still reading this. This is decent so far. I'm hoping it stays good. Plan on reviewing this before I go to my honeymoon at the end of the week. I don't know if I'll be able to also get up a ranking system for all 3 books as a video by the end of the week too, but I'll try. Just give me the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to try. I'm sorry for taking so long to get this review out. Like I said, it's just been extremely hectic with the wedding planning and stuff. You have it now. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you, and goodbye.